I made a list of all the powers they could give to Sigma when he joins Overwatch Stadium next season. Let's have a look. Sigma will be joining the Overwatch 2 Stadium roster next season, Season 17, alongside Zenyatta and Junkrat. And I took it to myself to try and predict, or rather think of some of the powers they could give to Sigma in the game mode. Now, since Sigma is already a very versatile tank, I decided to go a little harder on some of the potential he already has. Expand on his defensive, on his control and his damage, while also trying to counter some of the weaknesses he has, like giving him a little poke potential. The only thing I kinda stayed away from is giving him any form of healing. And that is because he already has very strong mitigation, with the overhealth that he can create for himself with his shields, with all of the control that he has. And there is of course the passive that is always helping him out. Just remember that this is my version of this armory. Blizzard could do something completely different. Oh, and yeah, some of my numbers might need some tuning. I don't know, it's really hard to predict the numbers where you can't actually try them in game. And when you're not a game designer, so yeah. Anyways, let's have a look at the 12 powers I designed for Sigma. And we're starting out with the upgrades of the powers for the Hyperspheres ability. And the first one is called Crescendospheres. When you successfully hit a target with Hyperspheres, raise attack speed with 2% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Now, like I said at the start, the numbers might need a little tweaking. And the idea here is when you get a direct hit, that it kind of speeds up. Now, the risk is if I speed it up too fast that he becomes too strong and too powerful. So I kept it to 2% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, which will give him 10% in total for 5 seconds. And it is basically for that one moment where he's handling the enemy tank to give him a bit of an edge. The next one is also for Hyperspheres, called the French Connection. I had fun with these names, and with the icons by the way. Anyways, Hyperspheres range is increased by 100% and now can critically hit enemies. Yeah, I thought about this one for a really long time. I wanted to give him a poke ability, so kind of extending that range, which is actually from 20 to 40 meters. I don't know if that is enough. On one end, that might need to be more. The thing is, you could extend his range, but he is still very slow shooting. So there is this slow cadence to every one of his shots, even if he shoots 2 orbs. And it wouldn't matter if that is on 40 meters or on 80 meters. So I decided, you know what, let's take the middle ground and give him the ability to critically hit enemies. Which in close range might be a little too strong, but it is Stadium, so cool work. So I only had 2 powers that I assigned to Hyperspheres. The next one is already for Kinetic Grasp, and it's called Kinetic Reflex. When you use Kinetic Grasp, throw an Accretion projectile with 30% less damage. This is something that we've seen him do with other heroes, which is if you kind of absorb damage, you'll automatically launch a counterattack, which makes it a little less one-sided, if that makes any sense. It also adds to the risk of shooting into Kinetic Grasp. And now it's going to give him overhealth and you will rock in the face, so I took it down to 30% because I wanted to limit the potential a little bit. It's an automatic shot. It doesn't take too much of an effort. On the other hand, I think 30 might be a little low. It could be that it needs to be bumped up to 50, but like I said, if you can't test it, it's kind of hard to decide on these numbers. Another one for Kinetic Grasp is called Forte, and it is something that is inspired by one of the things that we already saw, I think in the Halloween event, where Kinetic Grasp now also deflects projectiles. So it's not only just absorbing, it actually sends back the projectiles that you send into it. I love that ability. I always found it to be something that I would consider to add to his basic kit even. And it was a must-have for me to have it in here. There's a few of these powers that I chose just because I felt like, okay, that is something I want in his basic kit, or that is something I miss about his kit from way in the early days. So yeah, nostalgia. But this one is more of a practical thing where I feel that actually makes a lot of sense. I think it's more on brand that he sends back those projectiles. And last one for the Kinetic Grasp powers is called Forte. For every 100 damage absorbed with Kinetic Grasp, gain an extra sphere that will be in your next Hypersphere shot. So instead of just sending back the projectiles, you kind of store that power. You take that overhealth, but also if they keep shooting at it, they're going to tally up the amount of orbs that you'll be shooting back. Now, I did not cap this. So if they keep shooting into their grasp, there is of course a limit because grasp is rather short and there's only so much damage they can do. But I do think because it's for every 100 damage that you get an extra orb, that next shot is going to be loaded. If you're shooting into that grasp, you're priming his next pushback and you can make it really big. If he ends up sending 5 of those orbs in your direction with the splash damage, yeah, good luck. Moving over to Barrier. The first one is called Gravity Shields. Now to be fair, this is something that Aaron hinted at during an interview, that was something they were thinking about, and I found it a very interesting idea. He hinted at something with shields floating around him, and I started thinking about that and what that could look like. So I came up with this Barrier will spawn 3 small barriers that are floating around Sigma in a 3-meter radius, and that will remain there floating around until they are broken. Now, I specifically took a 3-meter radius because that is wide enough to kind of stand on top of someone and protect him, to kind of get him into your bubble, so to speak. But the fact that there are 3 shields also kind of opens up opportunities, because you can shoot in between those shields. They will just kind of be floating around. There will be chances to kind of aim through them, to do damage through those shields. And that's why I kept them up at all times until they are broken, because there are ways around them. It's not like he's going to be defended all the time. If you break him really fast, he'll have to wait till the cooldown is over to kind of spawn them again. And the health on those barriers is going to be the way to kind of tune them down or tune them up in case it's not strong enough. A second barrier power is called Relative Barrier. I came up with this idea just thinking about what else he could do with his shield. I mean, Reinhardt has his amplification shield. What could Sigma do with a shield that is actually kind of closer to what he does and what his strengths are? And his strengths are more into control, less into amplifying or being that generous leader of a team. I'm not doubting his personality. I think he has a fascinating personality, but he is very much in his own head, and he is very much about whoever he is looking at and who he is facing. So lore-wise, it made more sense that he used this barrier in a secondary way to control the enemy team. So I imagined a thing where he put up his shield and there's this kind of gravity tied into it, almost like it is a black hole, and it will slow down everybody that gets near to it. And on top of that, it's going to do damage because it's basically tearing at your fabric, so to speak. I kept the radius around the shield kind of limited, because if you make that too big, his shield is pretty big, it can be devastating. But it basically becomes an AoE slowdown and damage ability while also defending yourself and preferably your team that is behind the shield. That's where you need to be, guys. Behind the shield, okay? The last one in the barrier category is one of those that I just talked about earlier, that I personally kind of missed from the OG days, and it's called Retro Barrier. Barrier no longer has a cooldown and can be instantly deployed and retracted. That is one thing I still miss about Sigma. I understand why they removed it from the main game. It was too strong, it was too powerful. It took me quite a while, as someone that plays Sigma quite on the regular, to get used to that all those years ago when they removed it. But basically allowing him to just pop up his shield whenever he wants, just to put it there, retract it, as long as it's alive, as long as it has health. He can just keep putting it up and retracting it as he sees fit, which makes him very reactive, very strong. And I think in Stadium, that could actually work. That could be something they bring back just for Stadium. I understand why they don't do it in the general game. It is indeed very strong, but it could work in Stadium. So Retro Barrier. Listen, seriously, if there's one thing out of this whole list, pick that one. Although, while talking about something that I also would like. The next one is for Accretion, and it's called Lowlands Meteor. Accretion pulls down a meteor out of space, doing critical damage on direct impact, and splash damage with a short stun in a 5-meter radius. So basically, instead of just pulling some debris out of the floor and yeeting it at the enemy team, you just kind of pull it out of the sky. It's big, it makes a lot of noise, and it comes down with an impact, which is kind of insane for it not being an ultimate, but I mean, I think I kind of balanced it if it hits you directly, which is not going to be easy, because I'm imagining like a targeting circle, much like you have with Doomfist or whatever. And it is going to be the cast time that is going to define how strong it is. If that cast time is long enough, there is going to be enough time for people to avoid it. But if they don't pay attention and they get hit by that meteor, straight on, that's it. Goodbye. Which is going to be a rare occurrence. I think the splash damage and the stun within that 5-meter radius is where the gold is at. I think that is going to be very useful. It's basically a group stun, but instead of doing it from the front where there could be shields and whatever, you're just pulling it out of the sky and landing it on top of them. But you give them the opportunity to avoid it to a certain extent. Yeah, I kind of like that one too. A lot, actually. The next Accretion power is called Double Dutch. Accretion gains 1 additional charge. I mean, I think that just speaks for itself. We've seen them do that with a lot of other abilities, where they just give you that 1 additional charge, which has proven to be pretty strong in some cases. For Juno, it is quite critical for everything that she does. And there's a few others. I mean, the double 5-strike made a huge difference for Reinhardt back in the day. And I think the double Accretion might do the same thing. It is going to raise the control level on Sigma, and it also is going to allow you to use it in different ways, because currently you just kind of hold it for that one moment that is going to come around pretty fast, where you need to kind of set someone in their place, just tell them to sit down. But there's other ways of using Accretion that you won't necessarily sacrifice that ability for or get that cooldown rolling, because you know that that other moment that is going to be critical, where you need Accretion, is just over the horizon. So this way there's going to be a little more lenience in the way that you use it. It could be fun. All right, we're really at the last two. And those are for his ultimate, Graffitic Flux. And the first one is called... Sorry. Zero flux given. I laughed so hard when I found that. But it was pretty late at night. I was tired. It is still funny though. Graffitic Flux puts a gravity trap under all enemy players, dragging them down and locking them in place for 5 seconds. So that makes his ultimate basically a huge trap, where everybody gets kind of sucked in. Gravity is going really hard, nailing everybody to the floor, including the flying characters. They just drag down, you're done. You're not moving for the next 5 seconds. Now the big difference is when he does his ultimate now, there is a cast time, there's a hold time, there's a drop time. At that time he can yeet some of his spheres in there, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. This is just something he spawns right in the middle of a group. There's a cast time. I would give it a big radius, give the team a little bit time to maybe avoid it, but then you lock them in place and then you just have 5 seconds to yeet everything you have at them, including your teammates, which is going to kind of pressure Sigma a little more into that group moment, which Sigma players do have, but I think personality-wise, I don't know. I just wanted to use his graphitic essence, the idea of gravity, a little more than just throwing people up and smacking them down on the ground, which is cool, which is awesome. I just wanted to put a twist on that. And I took that one a little further with the last one. People are going to hate the next one. I would hate the next one if it should ever happen, which it won't, trust me. It is called Event Horizon. Graffitic Flux displaces all enemy players caught in the ability through a wormhole to a place of your choice. If you've ever played Marvel Rivals, you might be familiar with Jeff's ultimate. It's kind of a variation on that, where you just kind of pick everybody up that is caught in that flux, and you just get this huge aiming circle where you can just place them wherever you want to. You want to put them back in their own spawn if you can make it in time, because there's of course going to be a timer on this. You can put them back in their own spawn. Or do you want to kind of yeet them over the edge? Go for it. Why did I put this out there? It sounds like a bad idea. But at this stadium, anything's possible in a stadium. And that was all of them. Whatever they're going to come up with for Sigma, I'm sure that he is going to make a great addition to Stadium. Like I said at the start, he's a very versatile tank. And that might make him a very popular pick in Stadium. Anything an enemy team can throw at you, you'll have an answer. Well, most of the time. But what do you think Sigma needs in Stadium? Let me know in the comments. For now, however, that was it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It always helps me out. I also want to thank my patrons and YouTube members. You too can become a member over on patreon.com/theomnicpost and right here on YouTube to unlock exclusive rewards. If you have a few minutes left, maybe check out one of my other videos. But above all, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye bye.